Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Talk Soccer Me podcast, an American soccer fan's perspective on everything that's happening in European and international soccer. The show is hosted by yours truly, Jack Alt. Today is Tuesday, March 11th. We got an exciting show for you. We're going to talk Premier League Match Week 28. We got the Champions League knockout round first legs. And we got action from other leagues across Europe and debut of a new segment at the end of this episode. Before we preview the show, we just want to make sure to follow Talk Soccer Me on all social media and streaming services. Do it right now. It's at Talk Soccer Me on Twitter and TikTok, at Talk Soccer Me Podcast on Instagram. And to listen to Talk Soccer to Me again, the podcast is listed on Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Follows, positive ratings, comments, likes, subscriptions, anything goes a long way for the podcast. So just thanks to all who follow and listen. You are greatly appreciated. So we're going to go out of order a little bit today, and I was really thinking about this, and I think this is the best way to go for the podcast on this episode. We're going to talk Premier League first. We're going to talk about the other leagues across Europe first, before the Champions League games that happened last week, the first leg of the knockout round. The reason I'm doing that is because by the time this podcast gets out, it'll be Tuesday. There'll be 4 second leg games on Tuesday. There'll be 4 second leg games on Wednesday. The tie will be completed most likely by the time you listen to this, versus the Premier League won't have another round of games yet. So the Premier League will be the more up-to-date information. The Champions League, I'm still going to mention it. I'm still going to talk about it. If you'd like to hear my first leg opinions on any of the games, it's going to be towards the end of the episode if you'd like to skip ahead. But I think for the sake of kind of just what makes sense, we're going to go Premier League first, hit the other leagues, then we'll talk about the Champions League. And then, again, we got a new segment at the end. Very excited about it. You'll see when you get there, and I hope you get there. So let's get started in the Premier League. First game was Nottingham Forest going up against Manchester City. Manchester City came into this game really just on the back of an incredibly poor season so far, while Nottingham Forest has kind of been the success season in the Premier League this year, going from 17th last year to fighting for Champions League spots, and it almost started out pretty great for Manchester City. Erling Haaland nearly got a goal off of the opposing striker, Chris Wood, giving the ball away 7 minutes in, and then nothing too much happened after that. Manchester City had some chances early on in this game, but it was nothing too crazy after the Haaland move. It was kind of cagey in the first half. I don't think either team wanted to give each other anything, but what kind of surprised me is how even it felt. Like, I know Nottingham Forest is objectively having the better season. The fact that they were playing Manchester City as close as they were still surprised me. I can't help it. I still go into every game assuming Manchester City is going to dominate possession, be the overall better team, and there's going to be like a gulf of class between the two teams, and that just wasn't the case today. And then coming out of the second half, there still wasn't a lot. Callum Hudson-Odoi hit the post in the 67th minute. I actually think the shot was saved by Ederson, who pushed onto the post. And then, 75 minutes in, Manchester City really had no serious chance on goal besides the Haaland shot in the 7th minute. Props to Nottingham Forest. 83rd minute, Callum Hudson-Odoi got a long ball from Morgan Gibbs-White. He beat Ederson on his near post. You really have to wonder if Ederson should have saved that shot. But just like that, Nottingham Forest is up 1-0, and they saw the end of the game. Well, what a win for Nottingham Forest. When I started this podcast 4 months ago, Manchester City were going through it. They were struggling, and I thought eventually they would bounce back, and eventually we would be talking about them like the inevitable giants that they were, and that just hasn't been the case so far this season at all whatsoever. They couldn't get it done today against Nottingham Forest, and they looked like the lesser of the two teams. That shouldn't be possible, and I don't want to knock the good work that Nottingham Forest and Nuno Espirito Santo have done this year. They look great. They're probably going to qualify for a Champions League spot, which is going to be one of the best stories in recent years in English football. But I don't know what the answer is for Manchester City. Their new signings don't look like they're it. They don't look like they can take the team to the next level. Their replacements are a shell of the players they used to have. Pep Guardiola's tactics just don't seem very Guardiola-esque. It feels like he's kind of lost it to an extent. And the craziest thing about all that is the fact that they're still probably going to be in a Champions League spot, especially as I'm going to mention a couple more times in the show. England's going to get 5 Champions League spots. It's pretty safe at this point. Something needs to change this summer in Manchester City. I don't know if just throwing a lot of money at some players. It's like, what, Florian Wirtz going to turn this team around? Yeah, Rodri coming back from injury is going to be like a signing. But something's wrong. Something's fundamentally wrong. I think the conversation is going to have to start to come up soon, like, could it be Pep Guardiola? Is it best for these two parties to split apart? I don't know. Pep's Pep. Obviously, that's a pretty bold statement, but this wasn't the case this wasn't the game for Manchester City. Things didn't go well. And with this result, Nottingham Forest move into third place at the back end of match day 28. Manchester City are currently sitting 5th place, 4 points behind them. Next up on the Saturday slate, we head to the south coast of England as Brighton and Hove Albion took on Fulham, two teams that have kind of had similar seasons. Sitting mid-table, but within the realm of potentially nabbing that last European spot, whether it be in the Europa League or the Conference League. So it was a big match for both games, and Brighton came out of the game stronger. They came out good, they came out firing, but they couldn't convert it. They couldn't really do anything with it. They couldn't do anything with the chances. Fulham then had their first taste of something as Emile Smith Rowe, former Arsenal man, he missed a shot in the 23rd minute that he probably should have got a better foot on. But then in the 35th minute, Alex Iwobi made a wonderful run up the right side. He found Raul Jimenez, who puts it away with his second touch after a wonderful first one with his chest. And on their second real attempt, Fulham led this game 1-0. But they couldn't sit comfortably because not even 5 minutes later, Van Hecke gets a free header off a free kick at the far post, puts it into the other post, and it was pretty terrible defending on the free kick by Fulham. I mean, anytime you let a man wide open on the back post, you wonder what are you doing? Like, how can you let that happen? But it was a good ball in. So props to Brighton. And then Joao Pedro had a couple chances to open it up in the second half, scoring. Brighton actually looked like they took the lead. Matoma scored in the 54th minute, but he was offsides. Brighton then had another goal that was called offsides, Simon Adingra. But then, in the final moments, past the point of added injury time, Joao Pedro is fouled in the box as Fulham's Harrison Reed kicked the back of his leg. And then that same man, Joao Pedro, put the penalty away to pick up the 3 points for Brighton. Final score, Brighton 2, Fulham 1, a win at home. This was a good and a deserved win for Brighton. They were in control of this match against Fulham majority of the time. And this, in a few weeks, could be a game that Brighton looks back on and realize how important and crucial it was. Right now, they're only a couple points outside of that potentially 5th Champions League spot. And games like today, winning these matches at home against similar opponents and kind of just completely controlling is what it's going to take for Brighton to dream and potentially secure a Champions League spot. Because right now, if the season finished, they would actually secure the Conference League spot, which would still be a wonderful, wonderful accomplishment from the team from the South Coast. But you can imagine Brighton's dreaming bigger right now, and there's no reason they can't. They're playing good football. They don't lose games. Pretty sound side tactically, especially if teams like Aston Villa and Arsenal get a little tired in their European competition. Brighton can secure points here or there. Again, they were in control today against Fulham. Besides that one great run by Iwobi and the one shot on target that Fulham had, at no point did it feel like they were going to score again, take a lead, take over the game. Brighton just weren't as clinical in their attacking third as they could have been, or else this game could have been more than just 2-1. There's good players on this Brighton team, and I would very much like to see them in Europe next year. That could be fun. That could be a lot of fun. With this match, Brighton moved up to 7th place. They're 1 point behind Newcastle, Manchester City, 3 points behind Chelsea, and Fulham are currently sitting in 10th with 42 points, 4 points behind Brighton. We're going to stay in the south of England on our next game in the Saturday slate as Crystal Palace took on Ipswich Town. And the game started out pretty good. Eddie Nketiah with an early chance in the second minute, actually, for Crystal Palace, but it wasn't able to turn into anything. And Ipswich nearly answered with their own chance right after. So within first 3 minutes of the game, you had two really, really good chances. And then it slowed down a little bit. Eze had a decent chance for Crystal Palace in the 20th minute, but it didn't turn into anything. And frankly, Crystal Palace had the better first half, but it didn't result in a goal. But this game was wide open. Eze nearly started the scoring in the second half, hit a shot, got a weird deflection, a freaky loop, but the goalkeeper was able to get the better of it. Then Ipswich in the 62nd minute had two decent chances off a corner. Palace then nearly scored off a corner themselves 3 minutes later. And then a poor giveaway by Ipswich Town in the 78th minute almost sees Palace score, but Munoz can't get it past the keeper, Daniel Munoz. And then Ismail Sarr in the 82nd minute for Crystal Palace had some pretty powerful dribbling in the box. Season put it past the goalie, and then he does the Jean-Philippe Mateta celebration in honor of his teammate who got a cleat to the face in the FA Cup. And I think he got something like 25 stitches, and he's been out for a while. He was a striker who was on incredible form for Crystal Palace. And that finished the game. 1-0 Crystal Palace. Final score over Ipswich Town. No Jean-Philippe Mateta for Crystal Palace. No worry. Obviously, hope all the best for him. I mean, this was an open game. This was an exciting game. There was 34 total shots and 12 on target. Seriously, though, this game was entertaining. Definitely one of the more entertaining 1-0 finishes that I've seen in the last year or so. I mean, both teams had chances to put the ball in the back of the net. Ipswich Town, with their 8 shots on target, are going to feel really poorly that they weren't able to do anything with it. And for long stretches of the game, they did outplay Crystal Palace. But Crystal Palace has been one of the best informed teams in the second half of the season since the start of the new year, and they kept that rolling. They ultimately got the victory. Again, without Jean-Philippe Mateta, Eddie Nketiah is a good striker. He's not a great striker, but he's a good striker, and he is someone you can put up top, and he will create chances. He presses well. He did that for Arsenal last year. But yeah, no Mateta, no problem. Crystal Palace see it through with this result and this win. Crystal Palace are currently sitting 11th in the Premier League with 39 points. Ipswich Town are unfortunately sitting in 18th, the top of the relegation spot, 6 points behind Wolverhampton Wanderers. And as good of a story as it's going to be, I don't see Ipswich Town overcoming the 6 points against Wolves. And I think we are watching a dead man alive, as this team's most likely going to go down at the end of the season. But then we head north on this Saturday. Liverpool taking on Southampton. Liverpool without their manager Arne Slot, who's coming off a red card. This is team number 1 in the Premier League versus team number 20 in the Premier League. A team with 1 loss versus a team with 2 wins. What was going to happen? We have no idea. All jokes aside, Curtis Jones almost opened up the scoring in the 6th minute. There were some early plays by Liverpool, but nothing amounting to anything serious. And then a long throw from Southampton right before halftime leads to a disaster class, a miscommunication between Alisson and Van Dijk, 2 world-class players, as Will Smallbone, what a name, he puts it away for Southampton. And just like that, at the end of the first half, there's a shocking first half lead as the league losers are up on the league eventual winners. Second half start, Aaron Ramsdale makes a nice save on Harvey Elliott. And you do have to wonder yourself, could this happen? No, nobody thought that. No one thought that. That would have been absolutely stupid to think that. I sound stupid thinking about that, as I'm obviously messing up my words, because the Darwin Nunez, well, he tied it up in the 51st minute. He made a nice run across the 6-yard box, and like the erratic striker he is, he puts it away. And then less than 3 minutes later, Liverpool get a penalty. The same guy who scored earlier, Will Smallbone, fouls the guy who scored after him, Darwin Nunez. Mo Salah does his Mo Salah thing, and he scores to make it 2-1. Salah then nearly got another one in the 71st minute, but the Southampton player, Yukinari Sugawara, clear as day, hits the ball with his forearm in the box, which you can't do, last time I checked. And Liverpool were awarded a penalty, which, again, Mo Salah does Mo Salah things. He scores his 2nd goal. Liverpool 3, Southampton 1. That was your final score of this game. And I just want to say thank you to Southampton. As a neutral of this game, they made it look like for a second they might be able to do something at Liverpool. But that was never going to happen. Liverpool are fantastic. I think they're the best team in Europe this year. Again, they're just amazing. You can't beat them. The fact that they have 1 loss is shocking. I mean, hell, they're on pace for 92 points. And you got to give all the respect in the world to Southampton, a team that basically knows their season's over. They know they're done. They're still going to go to Liverpool, go to Anfield, give them a good fight. Don't let them walk away from this one easily. But it was one-sided. Liverpool are significantly better. They're going to end up as Premier League champions. It's just a matter of how many more trophies could they potentially win. And with this result, obviously Liverpool stays at the top of the Premier League, 15 points ahead of Arsenal with 1 more game played. Southampton is at the bottom of the Premier League with their horrific 9 points from 28 games and their minus 48 goal differential. The question I kind of find myself when I watch Liverpool games is, how good are Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones? Because they were a direct substitution today. Sometimes I wonder if it's just the Liverpool greater than the sum of all parts, or whatever the expression is, because I know they're good. They're obviously good. They're getting time in this Liverpool team. Curtis Jones started today. Harvey Elliott came off the bench. Harvey Elliott came off the bench against PSG and scored the winner. But if you put me on the spot and you said, how good of a soccer player is Curtis Jones or Harvey Elliott, I don't know if I could give you a straight answer, because I think a lot of guys would look really good if they had the chance to play in this Liverpool team. And I think that's going to be my next goal if I watch a Liverpool game. I'm just going to focus on Jones and Elliott. How good are those guys? Really? Because obviously, like when this Liverpool team's doing good, it's Mo Salah, it's Alisson Becker, it's Virgil van Dijk. Konate's been having a fantastic season. Trent Alexander-Arnold is one of the best attacking right backs in the world. Dominic Szoboszlai has just really come into his own as a footballer. Darwin Núñez is Darwin Núñez for all that's good and bad. But Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, obviously good, but how good? That's a question I ask myself from time to time. Next up in the Premier League slate, we had Brentford hosting Aston Villa. Aston Villa was coming off their weekday Champions League game. Brentford's been an average team in the Premier League this season, 11 wins, 5 draws, and 11 losses going into this game. They have some really strong players on attack, but for some reason this team is just incredibly average. I mean, Premier League average is still a really good soccer team, but it's still average nonetheless. In the game, started off interesting. John McGinn lost the ball early on for Aston Villa. It nearly cost them a goal, and then Brentford almost scored again a few minutes later. In the first 10 minutes, it was all Brentford. But as the first half went on, the game shifted back towards Villa's control. Ollie Watkins is a fantastic striker, and he proved it. Early into the second half, he scored on the 49th minute off the counter. He scored against his former team. He got the slightest of deflections, but hey, that's why you take the shot. Morgan Rogers scored right after, but Watkins was actually offsides in the build-up, so the goal wasn't given. Brentford came firing back, but they couldn't do anything. I feel like the Aston Villa defender Disasi was constantly making some solid stops. Vissa did hit the post in one shot. Shada had a good chance for Brentford. And actually, Aston Villa were without their keeper, Emiliano Martinez. But towards the end of the game, Ollie Watkins failed to score on a one-on-one breakaway. But he kind of had a smile on his face after that because he knew the game was over. Villa survived the Brentford second half kind of onslaught, domination of possession and chances to see out the win as they continue their push for Champions League spots or just European spots at this point. Final score, Brentford 0, Aston Villa 1. I think most people would have agreed going into this season that if Aston Villa made a deep Champions League run, it was going to be tough for them to replicate the form they had last year and finish in the top 4 and or the top 5. But you have to give them all the respect of the world for only being 4 points outside of a Champions League spot this late into the season with 9 games to go for them, as they were strong and solid and decisive defensively in their victory against Brentford. I mean, the game could have went either way. Brentford had their chances. Villa had theirs. It wasn't too exciting, but a win's a win, and Villa is a good team, and they proved it again. I mean, it's a fantastic coaching job all around from Unai Emery. I think the signings and the loan signings of Marco Asensio and Marcus Rashford in January showed that they're not going to just sit back and enjoy their Champions League run and be proud of the effort they put in. There's a team and an organization that consistently is going to be looking to qualify for Champions League spots, and they proved it today. They were a class above Brentford. I think they're a class above Brentford on paper as well as the product they're putting out on the field. And this season, Aston Villa has impressed me. I mean, yeah, they're 8th, but they're only 4 points from 4th. They're 2 points from 5th. Again, 5th is probably going to get you Champions League qualification. So overall, just a fantastic job by the Villa this year. And with that result, Villa actually move up to 8th with their victory over Brentford. They do have a game in hand compared to everyone else around them. Brentford are currently sitting in 12th at 38 points. They are right now 21 points ahead of the relegation spots and about 8 points behind any European spot. So right now they're kind of stuck in that middle limbo of the Premier League, or as I usually call it, the Crystal Palace zone. No Europe, but no relegation. As we keep rolling through the Premier League weekend, the next match is Wolves versus Everton. These are two teams that were looking like the two potential teams from last year's Premier League that could go down. Everton has come into this game with wonderful form under their new manager, David Moyes, even though he is not a new manager to Everton. And Wolves are actually right now sitting much closer to those relegation spots that we were just now talking about. So it's going to be a big game for either team. Obviously, Everton have given themselves the breathing room, but Wolves are still within the grasp of an Ipswich Town or Leicester City if they were to catch a run of form. And Everton got us started off early. Decore with the first real chance, 11 minutes into the game. Wolves 8 Nori had some nice dribbling, but a poor shot for Wolves. And then in the 33rd minute, Jack Harrison, the former Wake Forest Demon Deacon, scored his first Everton goal of the year as his shot from the top of the box gets 2 deflections and Everton goes up 1-0. But less than 7 minutes later, Wolves would answer right before halftime. Some crisp passing and Marshall Monetzi gets his first ever Wolves goal. Bellegarde gave a fantastic assist, a perfectly weighted pass in the build-up. And just like that, going into halftime, the game really sped up and it was 1-1. Unfortunately, the second half wouldn't have the excitement of the first half. Jurgen Strand Larsen for Wolves had a decent shot in the 71st minute, but the ever-classy Jordan Pickford was able to make a save. And then immediately off that shot, Larsen, a counter led to a decent chance for Beto, which actually made for like a really exciting 2 minutes. So the rest of the second half was kind of slow and not worth watching, but those 2 minutes were right there. Alcaraz thought he might have a potential winner for Everton, but it was ultimately saved by the Wolves keeper. And a kind of boring game finishes 1-1. Wolves 1, Everton 1. That is your final score. If I'm a Wolverhampton Wanderers fan, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable right now. I don't like the 6-point gap between us and some of the teams in the relegation zone. And I can't look at this Wolves team and think to myself, well, they're playing good enough to escape relegation. I think the thing that's benefiting Wolves most is not their poor form. It's the Ipswich Town and Leicester City's even poorer form. Wolves need to watch out. They need to start getting points soon because there's a 10-point gap between them and the likes of the Everton team they just played today and West Ham United. Wolves are sitting down near these relegation zone teams, and if one of them, Leicester or Ipswich, catches fire, things could look bad for Wolves. Their only real benefit right now is the fact that they do have a 13 and 18-point goal differential difference between the two teams. But these are the matches like today that Wolves need to be winning if they want to stay in the Premier League. Everton at home needs to be a match that you're going to win. And Everton got enough done to get the point. It's a good point for Everton. I think Everton are comfortably away from a relegation zone. You got to give all the credit to David Moyes for putting Everton in this position. And right now, if you'd have told me at the beginning of the season that Everton were 1 point behind Tottenham and Manchester United with 28 games to go, I wouldn't believe you. And while that might be more of a reflection on the bad seasons behind Tottenham and Manchester United and the strays that they're catching right now on this podcast, I think David Moyes has done a fine job at Everton. And I'm very excited to see what he can do with this Everton team after a summer of transfers and kind of building a team around his ideals. Yeah, and with this result, Wolverhampton Wanderers, Wolves, are sitting in 17th, the last spot for safety in the Premier League at 23 points, and Everton are 2 spots ahead of them in 15th at 33 points. And then we move to Chelsea versus Leicester City. Chelsea coming off their Conference League win over FC Copenhagen, hosting a Leicester City team who's currently sitting in the relegation spots. And Cole Palmer thought he might have got this game started off great for Chelsea with an attempt to earn a penalty in the box, but the ref was not having it. He waved them up, told him to get up. He also had a good chance about 8 minutes into the game, but he was unable to do anything with it. Then in the 19th minute, Jadon Sancho, with some nice dribbling, earns Chelsea a penalty after he is tripped in the box by Leicester's Victor Christensen. Frankly, a pretty stupid foul to be committing. Unfortunately, though, Chelsea's their main man, Cole Palmer, was unable to score on the penalty. He put it to his right. It was a decent penalty, but it wasn't enough as the Leicester City goalkeeper got the good jump on the ball and was able to push it out for a corner. Game stayed 0-0. Chelsea then got kind of lucky. Ball got sent in. There really wasn't anyone for Leicester in the box, maybe only Jamie Vardy. But a header from Tosin Adebayo nearly went into their own net. Would have been a pretty terrible own goal. And as is common in a match between a team like Chelsea and between a team like Leicester City, Chelsea are kind of dominant in like the possession, how the flow of the ball is constantly towards Leicester City's net. But in the first half, Chelsea weren't able to do anything, and the game went into halftime 0-0. The start of the second half, however, definitely seemed like a more even game compared to the first half, but that did not last for long. As Cucurella gets the ball outside of the box off a pass and from kind of far away, kept it on the ground, put it in the far corner, and honestly, a very impressive goal for Marc Cucurella as in the 60th minute, he was able to give Chelsea a 1-0 lead. And then about 20 minutes after the goal, Chelsea had a shot that was blocked by Leicester City's Connor Cody. Hit his elbow, he was away from his body. There was some speculation on whether or not it should have been a penalty, oh my gosh. But I kind of agree with the referee. I didn't think it should be a penalty. And yeah, Chelsea didn't have their second penalty of the day. I guess there's something about a VAR stoppage that just does not allow me to speak in proper sentences anymore. I don't know. And in the final couple minutes, Leicester City really weren't able to pressure the Chelsea net. Final score, Chelsea 1, Leicester 0. There's an expression, a win's a win, and I think Chelsea's going to walk away from that. Obviously, they're a much better team than Leicester City. I think they might have came into this game hoping for a bigger victory than 1-0, a larger margin of victory. But again, I think Chelsea's just going to be happy to win this one. They've primed themselves back to being in the kind of driver's seat of their Champions League hunt. It's not where they were a couple months ago in the Premier League when they were, sitting second or sitting third, but a win's a win. I think they're a little worried. Their boy Cole Palmer's been on a scoreless streak as of late. I mean, he's still a fantastic creator, and he's a great player, and great players will always get back into good form. So Chelsea's going to be happy at this one, and Chelsea, they're really going to want to push for this Champions League spot. I mean, it's an obvious statement. Of course, everyone wants to be in the Champions League, but I think the way this team's played under Maresca this year, they've got a young core. They've got great players in Cole Palmer, Pedro Neto, Moises Caicedo. I think maybe upgrade the goalie in the summer. Chelsea could be a threat in the Champions League next year. It's a good team. I think it's going to be a good team. It could be a fun team to watch in the Champions League. A team we won't be watching in the Champions League next year, however, Leicester City. It's a team that I think deserves to be in the Premier League. When you think Premier League, I mean, they won a title less than 10 years ago. But unfortunately, life is not fair. And it's very hard in the last couple of years for a team to come up from the Championship and stay in the Premier League. No one did it last year, and it's looking like no one's going to do it this year. And unfortunately, the same is probably going to be said for Leicester City. They fought hard today. They really weren't able to create anything substantial. Their counters had some threat, but nothing Chelsea couldn't manage. I don't think there was a single point in this game where Robert Sanchez went, whew, I got lucky there. No, it never happened. Leicester just don't have the quality to stay up in the Premier League. And unfortunately, I like their chances of staying up less than I do Ipswich Town. I think Ipswich Town's been playing better soccer. This Leicester team is just sad. I'm going to enjoy these last couple of moments we got with Jamie Vardy in the Premier League. Because what a player. And now we're going to go to London. Tottenham hosts Bournemouth. And I'm going to spoil it now. We actually had a game with goals. Like, I can just talk about the goals. I don't have to talk about all these chances. All these 1-0, 1-1 games that the Premier League had this weekend. It's kind of boring. I didn't want to say it while I was talking about the respective games. And no offense to the teams. But finally, some interesting freaking soccer. And Bournemouth got us started off in the 40th minute with the scoring. Bournemouth were able to put a stop to a Tottenham counter, and a fantastic cross was sent in. Bournemouth's Tavernier was able to get on the end of that cross with a slide, and he put Bournemouth up away at Tottenham 1-0 going into halftime. I mean, truly just a fantastic run and cross by Milos Kerkez. Bournemouth came out of the halftime period as the better team. And then just like that, Chloe Vert found Evan Nilsson with a wonderful pass in the Tottenham box. In the 65th minute, Bournemouth found themselves up 2-0 at Tottenham. But it was not going to stay that way. 2 minutes later, Pape Sarr took the ball up for Tottenham. And he was in kind of that spot near the corner of the box where I don't know if he was putting in a cross or if he was putting in a shot. But it doesn't matter how it gets into the back of the net, as long as it gets in the back of the net. His looping ball goes over the Bournemouth keeper. He hits the back post, and Tottenham find themselves back in this game again, scoring less than 2 minutes after Evan Nielsen's goal for Bournemouth. I mean, it's frankly a great response and just a freak of a goal. And then in the 85th minute, the ever great Heung-min Son scores for Tottenham because he's great. No two ways about it. Game finishes 2-2, Tottenham 2, Bournemouth 2 at Tottenham. There was some good and there was some bad for Tottenham Hotspur. I think the bad was the fact that they went down 2-0 at home. And for a little while, it looked like this was going to be a very, very bad day for Tottenham. The good was, takes grit and effort. Anytime a team is able to be down by 2 goals and come back and get any type of point, whether it's a win or a draw. And I kind of think that's indicative of Tottenham's season. They've flashed potential at times, but other times they weren't good enough, and it's cost them. I can't help but wonder where Tottenham would be if it weren't for Son. I mean, he's been fantastic. Tottenham's best player throughout the season and, frankly, in the last 5 years. I mean, he's got 7 goals and 9 assists. He'll probably end up in double figures for both. I don't know. I really don't know what to think of this Tottenham team. The injuries this season is really what's preventing me from having a definitive opinion on them because they were very injury-ridden for a good while this season. I have friends who are Tottenham fans, and anytime anyone wanted to mess with them about how poorly Tottenham was playing, it was instantly, well, we're so hurt. We're so hurt. And they were. They had made a point. They made a good point. I think sticking with Ange Postecoglou is a good call. There's been an insane rate of turnover of Tottenham coaches since Mauricio Pochettino's left, and the only time Tottenham's been good, like legitimately good, in my Premier League watching experience in the last 10 to 12 years has been under Mauricio Pochettino. So I do think it's best for Tottenham if they leave Ange Postecoglou as their head coach. I think that's what's best for the team. Regardless of where Bournemouth finish, I think it's been a fantastic season for them. I think they can absolutely be proud of everything they've done. I think they would have liked to have seen themselves get this victory against Tottenham and not blow a 2-0 lead. But again, this is still just amazing. This is amazing stuff we're seeing. The Bournemouth coach, I mean, he's being linked with Real Madrid right now and that's an insane statement. A coach going from Bournemouth to Real Madrid, but they're 5 points off of Chelsea in 4th place. They're 3 points off of Manchester City in 4th place, in 5th place. Yes, they are currently sitting in 9th right now, but that 4th place to 9th, it's not a crazy gap. There's plenty of room for Bournemouth to overcome that. I mean, you got guys like Kepa Arrizabalaga, Dean Huijsen, Justin Kluivert, Tyler Adams, Evan Nielsen, Antoine Semenyo. These are good players. And I hope, and this is usually never the case in European football, but I hope that Bournemouth are able to keep that core intact. It won't work out that way. The good players will go other places. They'll sign for quote-unquote bigger clubs. Bournemouth have been a fantastic story this season. I hope for the sake of parity, I hope for the sake of interest, I hope for the sake of soccer that Bournemouth are able to get one of the European spots in the Premier League this season. And then the final game on Sunday was Manchester United hosting Arsenal, a classic tie, a rivalry that's seen many fantastic matches over the years. And this maybe not falls into the fantastic category, but it was an interesting game nonetheless. It was a little cagey to begin the early part of the first half. I think Man United looked up for the task today. And then when they get a foul outside of the box, Bruno Fernandes is able to score a free kick. I know there were some Arsenal fans complaining on social media that Bruno had 11 or 12 yards and it was too much space, but I think that goal was really kind of on David Raya. I don't think I really understood what he was going for. Second half comes out. Second half was a wide open game. I mean, it really was. And I think Manchester United looked the better team in the second half, which frankly surprised me, as Arsenal, I think, are the better team. But on this day, that wasn't the case. And then Arsenal gets some serious chances. Manchester United gets some serious chances. Jurrien Timber finds Declan Rice in the box in the 74th minute. Was able to pull the ball across the goal and score into the far corner. Tie the game at 1-1. Manchester United had a really good chance to score right at the end of the game, but it was blocked by David Raya, and then it was blocked by David Raya. It was a fantastic double save. I think David Raya was the man of the match for Arsenal. And yeah, I think this game really more is about like what it means versus like what actually happened. And for Arsenal, there was some good. I think Arsenal fans are going to always be encouraged by seeing the fantastic performances out of guys like Declan Rice, who's just been on fire in the midfield. David Raya proving that, if the rest of Arsenal aren't playing too well, he can still step up and make some big saves. I think Arsenal fans can be encouraged by the fact that Gabriel Martinelli is back. And he looked lively. He looked a little rusty in terms of finishing, but he definitely added a little spark to Arsenal's attack that they so desperately need. But then there's the bad. The bad is the title race is over. I mean, if Arsenal were to hypothetically win the game in hand against Liverpool, they would be 12 points behind with 9 games to go. And it honestly doesn't even matter what Arsenal could or couldn't do because Liverpool look to be in a form of which they're just not going to drop points. And I know it's encouraging that they're going to easily move on to the next round of the Champions League. And Bukayo Saka should be back by the end of the month. I think the international break will also help all returning players, but this season's just ultimately going to be a disappointment for Arsenal. And I think the thing you can really look at on this table is the 10 draws. 3 losses is great. Goal differential is great. They've got the best defense in Europe if you look at goals conceded in the league and Europe combined. But those 10 draws, I mean, I think they'd rather, took some out to be wins and took out some out to be losses. You'd be better off. But the lack of clinical finishing and that little sharp that Arsenal have actually had the last 2 years. Just wasn't there. It hasn't been there this year. And it's just another disappointing result for Arsenal. For Manchester United, it's probably a mixture of emotions. I think Manchester United fans can be proud of the way they played. It really feels like they've stuck it to Arsenal. And this is an Arsenal team for the last 2 to 3 years in recent form, outside of that FA Cup penalty win, has really had Manchester United's number. So this is a good result. But at the same time, this is also Manchester United we're talking about. If they're up 1-0 at Old Trafford against a rival, you'd expect to win the game. And it's probably frustrating because I think if they played as well as they did today in other games this season, they wouldn't be so far down the table. And there's a lot of noise behind the scenes in Manchester United with their owners and finances and making cuts. And now apparently there's a new, potential new stadium. Be interesting. Kind of all over the place for Manchester United. Some good, some bad. I think Amorim's good. I think Bruno Fernandes is good. But I think there's a lot of bad. I'm not really inspired by this attack. I'm not inspired by Garnacho, by Xerxes, by Højlund. I know they're young, but this is the Premier League. Figure it out somewhere else. And with the result, Arsenal are now sitting second, 55 points, 4 ahead of Nottingham Forest, 15 behind Liverpool. Manchester United are currently sitting in 14th, 34 points, tied on points with Tottenham. Though Tottenham have a significantly better goal differential, and they're a point ahead of the likes of Everton and West Ham, which is just kind of shows you how Manchester United's season's been so far this year. So the final game in the Premier League slate from this weekend, I will admit, it was on Monday. Myself, like other people, I got to work. And the game was going on as I recorded. So I'm gonna, it's not gonna be the greatest recap. Bruno Guimaraes' goal saw Newcastle go to West Ham and pick up a 1-0 victory. This is a good win for Newcastle. I was a little worried this year, no Champions League football. Can they bounce back and put up a fight for a Champions League spot? They're sitting 6th. They're in 47 points. I mean, a much better season than the West Ham team they just defeated today, who are sitting in 16th place on 33 points. And yeah, these next couple of weeks are going to be crucial for Newcastle. I think this is a club where the owners and some of the players have expectations to the Champions League. I think it's without a doubt that Newcastle have several Champions League quality players, the likes of Sandro Tonali, Alex Isaac, Jacob Murphy. These are guys that should be playing in the Champions League. So it'll be interesting going forward. See how Newcastle feels, where Newcastle goes. I'm very excited for them. I'm very excited to watch them. Should make for an interesting couple of weeks. So that wraps up the Premier League. And we'll get into the Champions League. And sometimes I feel like I'm giving false advertisement on this podcast because it is a Premier League centric podcast. I mean, listen, I live in the United States of America. Premier League's king here when it comes to European football. If I think of everyone I know that really cares and gives a shit about soccer, an overwhelming majority are going to be a fan of a Premier League team. It's going to be likes of your Tottenhams, your Arsenals, your Manchester Uniteds, your Chelseas, your Liverpools. I've got a few friends who dabble in the German league. I got a few friends who dabble in the Spanish league. Your Dortmunds, your Bayern Munichs. I've got friends who are Juventus fans. But ultimately, Premier League's king. It really is in this country. And that's kind of where all my attention goes. It's hard. I mean, listen, you got 10 Premier League games in a weekend. You got 8 Champions League games to watch. And yeah, I'd love to watch Napoli versus Atalanta, but sometimes it falls through the wayside, and it doesn't get as much of my attention here. So we'll try to run through the other leagues and what happened in their tables pretty quickly. And then we're going to go into the Champions League games pretty in depth. On Saturday, Barcelona, unfortunately, had their La Liga match postponed after the death of the club doctor. That was a match against Osasuna, and I know they'll be honoring him in the second leg of their Champions League tie against Benfica. On Saturday in the Bundesliga, all the big teams lost. Bayer Leverkusen lost to Werder Bremen 2-0, which would have been really, really big for them because Bayern Munich got a shocking defeat against a team sitting in relegation spots in Germany, Bochum. It was a 3-2 final score. Dortmund, who've been just having a pretty terrible season, maybe they can make up for it in the Champions League, lost to Augsburg 1-0, and then Leipzig drew Freiburg 0-0. This German table is, it couldn't have made it easier for Bayern Munich. They're having a pretty good season. They only have 2 losses, but they're 8 points ahead of Bayer Leverkusen with 9 to go. And then, frankly, it's kind of surprising because Mainz and Eintracht Frankfurt are sitting 3rd and 4th. I don't believe the German league is going to be pushing for one of those 5th Champions League spots. So, yeah, no. It very well could be Bayern Munich, Bayer Leverkusen, Mainz, and Eintracht Frankfurt representing Germany in Europe in the Champions League next year. And Freiburg's the team in 5th. Dortmund are 7 points out from the Champions League, 15 out from potential relegation spots. But I mean, listen, the German league outside of Bayern Munich's dominance has always been pretty solid for parity. There's a bunch of decent teams. Stuttgart, Hoffenheim, Union Berlin, they're all right. And then you got the likes of Hamburg and Schalke, who should be in big clubs in Germany, and they're all the way in the second division. So it's a weird league. I think Bayer Leverkusen is going to be really good for a while, though, because I do think they're going to end up with Xabi Alonso again next year. I know Real Madrid is circling the water as the sharks that they are, but I don't know. I got this hutch. I got this feeling that Alonso's going to stay at Leverkusen. But yeah, let's get in the Italian league. Let's make a little shift. Milan defeated Lecce 3-2. Milan's not really relevant right now in terms of Champions League discussion or the Serie A title over in Italy, but our boy Christian Pulisic, the great American, got 2 goals to win the game as Milan were down 2-0 going into the 60th minute. Boy's been having a good year. You know, you love to see the American doing well. Inter Milan, who are in the title fight, they defeated Monza 3-2. They also had to come back from 2-0 down. Goals from Arnautovic, Çalhanoğlu, and Kyriakopoulos. It was actually an own goal. He's a Monza player. But yeah, great result for Inter. Team that's been doing mighty fine. But they are in the midst of a title fight because Napoli defeated Fiorentina. Goals from Romelu Lukaku and Giacomo Raspadori offset a late Albert Gudmundsson goal for Fiorentina. And then Atalanta defeated Juventus 4-0 in Juventus. An absolute dominant result. And then Roma got a first minute goal against Empoli. I got a soft spot for Roma, so I figured I'd mention them. But we'll get back to this title fight. If you think Liverpool being so far ahead of the Premier League is boring, I have news for you. This Italian title fight looks spicy. You got Inter in first, 61 points, 36 goal differential. Napoli in second, 60 points, 22 goal differential. Atalanta coming off that big win against Juventus, 58 points, 37 goal differential. Every matchup between now and the end of the season, they all got 10 games left, is going to be super, super important. I mean, every single one of these teams is great. They're full of talent. Inter coming off their victory last year. Napoli coming off a victory 2 years ago. Atalanta, I don't even remember the last time or if they've ever won the Italian league. Yeah, Atalanta have never won Serie A. But besides that side note, I mean, this is going to be super exciting. This is definitely something to pay attention to. I know, if you watch the Champions League, the Italian league's on Paramount Plus too. So definitely access to watch this. This is going to be super exciting. I think Inter is going to come to the top, but I think Napoli does have the advantage of no European football. And actually, now that I think about that, Atalanta was just also recently eliminated in the Champions League, shockingly. But yeah, I think Inter, despite the fact that they probably will make a run deeper into the Champions League, they've just got so much quality. They did it last year. They did it a couple years ago. I think Inter's going to walk away with the title, but it's going to be exciting nonetheless. And I know I mentioned that Barcelona did not play due to the tragic death of their doctor, but Atletico and Real Madrid were in action. Atletico suffered a shocking defeat against Getafe, a 2-1 victory. 2 late goals after a Correa red card for Atletico Madrid, so they completely fumbled this game away. And then Real Madrid hosted their Madrid neighbors in Rayo Vallecano. Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. were able to get early goals, and that kind of put it away. The game was 2-1. Not the greatest showing from Real Madrid, but a win nonetheless. So Real Madrid now are tied on points with Barcelona. Barcelona do have the game in hand now, and they have a better goal differential. Atletico Madrid, with dropping points, has now lost their opportunity to be at the top of La Liga, and this is also an equally as good title fight. I think Athletic Bilbao is a little too far to be really considered here, but still a good result nonetheless. I think there's a really good chance that Spain could also end up with that 5th Champions League spot. I actually really need to look at that and see who's doing well, but there's still a lot of European football left to be played. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where the Spanish league's at. And now we're going to transition to the Champions League matches. We're going to talk about them. I'm just going to kind of recap them for all those who have listened this far. I'll do kind of more of a grand scheme talking points after the second tie once the matchups are over. Again, this is just the first leg, but we'll still talk about it. I mean, you got Club Brugge versus Aston Villa. Brugge was coming off a really, really impressive win over Atalanta, but it was a fantastic start for Aston Villa in this round as Leon Bailey got his head on a ball from a free kick. Nice half volley. He crashes into the box. 3 minutes into the game, Aston Villa was up 1-0. It was all Villa in this game in the first 10 minutes. And then kind of against the run of play, a long ball for Club Brugge. Finds late runners who put it past Emi Martinez. It was scored by De Kuiper. And just like that, Club Brugge tied the game up at home. Brugge had another really good chance around the 30-minute mark, but it wasn't the craziest first half outside of those first 10 minutes of goals. Villa made 4 substitutions at the 63-minute mark. It's not really remarkable, but it's still just kind of surprising to me to see 4 substitutions at one time. I mean, it made enough of an impression on me to make a point while watching the game and write it down on my notes. And then around actually right after the substitutions, Marco Asensio had a really good chance right as he came on. But then the 67th minute mark, Tyrone Mings had one of the saves of the year. And again, he's not Aston Villa's goalkeeper. That's Emiliano Martinez. It was a headed goal that should have went in for Brugge, but Mings gets the slightest touch while facing the goal. I mean, it's something I really recommend. It's probably one of the 4 things I'll recommend you look up while talking about these Champions League ties. And then Morgan Rogers for Aston Villa sends the ball into the box with a whip cross in the 81st minute that ends up actually being an own goal. The Brugge defender got there first. I think Ollie Watkins probably would have scored it. I mean, he was right there, and he's a good striker. And then 4 minutes later, an awkward ball is mishandled by a Brugge player in his own box. He trips a Villa player. I don't remember which one. And then Marco Asensio, with all his quality, puts the penalty away. And Aston Villa, kind of against the run of play, get a 3-1 victory over Club Brugge. I think it's going to be very, very important in their tie as they take the tie back to England. And I mean, they really made it easy for themselves. They got a 2-goal lead going into the home tie. I know this isn't the day of the away goals like it used to be, but a good result nonetheless. But yeah, we're going to move through these Champions League games pretty quickly. We're going to start, we're not going to start. We're going to go to another English team. It was Arsenal, who had to go on the road to PSV Eindhoven. Eindhoven coming off a pretty impressive victory over Juventus. Pretty chaotic game. And this game was all Arsenal. Shockingly Arsenal. But actually, not early. I mean, Declan Rice had a nice shot go in. He was offsides in the build-up. And it did feel like for a couple minutes, is this going to be the same Arsenal who've had trouble scoring? And then in the 15th minute, PSV actually should have scored. There was a cross that was met by Saibari, and David Raya didn't get the best touch on it. I mean, Gabriel pressured the shot, and maybe that's what pushed it over, or I think it hit the post. But PSV Eindhoven 110% should have been up in the 15th minute, and that's kind of crazy considering the final score. It really would have changed the direction of the game by a lot. But then less than 2 minutes later, Arsenal capitalized. A Declan Rice cross is met by the head of Jurrien Timber. He scores his first ever Champions League goal, and Arsenal is up 1-0. Their first goal from open play in a good while. Feels like an incredibly long time. And then not even 5 minutes later, there was a teenage combination for Arsenal. A hail end, a product combination. Miles Lewis-Skelly finds Ethan Nwaneri in the box. Nwaneri gets a good power on the shot, sends it to the top of the goal. Arsenal go up 2-0 within the first 21 minutes, and then they just kind of laid it on from there. But actually, before I get into more goals, Arsenal kind of got lucky. Miles Lewis-Skelly, he kind of dove in on the ball going into the first, he got a yellow card early on. And then he dives into a ball about 25 minutes in. He misses it. I think the ref got it right by not giving the yellow card because the guy wasn't heading towards the box. He was kind of heading away towards the box. But again, it was another situation where if this thing doesn't go Arsenal's way, it really could have changed the trajectory of the game. And Lewis-Skelly was very, very fortunate to the point where Arsenal actually subbed him out in the first half. The commentator wasn't too pleased about that. You got to let the young guy develop. But it's a Champions League tie. You don't take any risks. You don't. I think Miles Lewis-Skelly is a very fantastic defender. I think he's going to be a really good player for Arsenal going forward. But he does have a history so far in his senior appearances of cards. He's a little rash and it's challenging. And he'll figure that out as he grows up. But again, this is a Champions League matchup. I think it was the right call. 30th minute in, PSV can't clear a ball. Somehow, Mikel Merino just ends up with it right outside the 6-yard box. I think it'll be probably the easiest shot of his career, and things really just got away from PSV from there. I mean, yeah, in the 40th minute, Thomas Partey kind of stupidly, he got pushed in the box. He was pushed, but he had his arm up. He freaking armbar someone. Noah Lang puts away for PSV. It makes things a little interesting for halftime. And I guess maybe I am saying all this wrong because with the hindsight of everything that happened in this game, I keep saying it's getting away from PSV. But there were moments where it didn't appear that way. Because actually before halftime, after a Declan Rice chance, Luke de Jong actually almost made it 3-2. And this is probably the third instance of really could have changed the trajectory of the game. But right after halftime, it was over. Nwaneri sends a ball in. It's pushed away from the goalkeeper. It's right to the feet of Martin Odegaard. The goal's wide open. Next thing you know, it's 4-1. Less than 2 minutes later, Trossard and Calafiori have a wonderful 1-2 link-up. Trossard dinks it over the goalkeeper with no effort, 5-1. Odegaard then gets Arsenal's 6th with kind of a knuckling ball. It was a dominant string of passes. Hits one from outside the box. Again, it knuckles. I think the goalkeeper for Eindhoven should have done better, Walter Benitez. But he scores nonetheless. And then in the 85th minute, Odegaard finds Calafiori with a wonderfully weighted pass to make it an insane 7-1. The largest win by a team away in a Champions League knockout round in the modern era. I mean, yeah, this tie's over. I mean, they're going back to Arsenal. Arsenal aren't going to lose by 6 at home. It's done. Fantastic performance. I mean, you got to respect to Eindhoven. I mean, they fought them. They opened the play up, and maybe that's what eventually killed them because, yeah, Arsenal were the better side and then some. They were clinical. I think there was like a statistic at one point. Like, Arsenal didn't even have a corner. I think it was like 5-1, and Arsenal hadn't even had a corner yet. And PSV still had 12 shot attempts. I mean, Arsenal scored 7 goals on their 8 shots on target. It's just a clinic in really, really good finishing. And it goes back to London with a very favorable position for Arsenal. Then we go to Dortmund versus Lille. Dortmund looking to get something out of this season, considering they've been incredibly disappointing in the Bundesliga, as I mentioned prior in this episode. And there really wasn't anything too crazy in the first couple minutes until 22 minutes in. Karim Adeyemi, he hit a fantastic shot. If you're wondering yourself, like, what did it look like, and you've watched a lot of soccer, think of Thiago's wonderful Champions League goal in the group stages for Liverpool against Porto a couple years ago, where he kind of hits it with the outside of the boot and it just skims across the ground. It is truly one of the most aesthetically pleasing goals, both Thiago's and the one Adeyemi scored in this knockout tie. I do sincerely encourage you to look it up. It's fantastic. And then Pascal Gross thought he made it 2-0 for Dortmund before halftime, but he was offsides. And again, besides that wonderful finish, I mean, there really wasn't anything noteworthy in the first half. Don't really have many notes. Lille came out stronger in the second half, and they were rewarded for it. In the 68th minute, Lille had a wonderful string of passes, and Haraldson, as soon as he scores, Haraldson scores his 7th in Champions League this season. It was coming. Lille looked better in the second half. You almost can make the argument that both teams probably should have scored 2-3 in their respective dominant halves, but it didn't prove to be a very exciting game. I actually kind of really like Lille going back into the second tie in France. I think they will have enough to get past Dortmund and win the game. But then there was the final game on Tuesday, the one I think everyone was looking forward to, the Madrid Derby. Real Madrid versus Atletico Madrid. Obviously, Atletico Madrid's kind of the little brother to Real Madrid. They've gotten them in the league. They've gotten them in the cup. But in the Champions League, Real Madrid have always had Atletico Madrid's number. And it just looked like it again today. Rodrigo opened it up early. Valverde, who's been playing as a makeshift right back, finds his run with a beautifully weighted pass. Rodrigo cuts it in on his left, makes it 1-0. Rodrigo's been one of the most underrated players in this recent run of Real Madrid's success. He is so effortlessly good. And everyone, I mean, obviously, Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius are going to be the talking points. But Rodrigo is a fantastic player who scored many clutch goals in Real Madrid's 2 Champions League titles in the last 3 years. And then he nearly earns a penalty early on. I mean, Atletico Madrid looked really rattled. But in this game, everything can change in the drop of a dime. Because Julian Alvarez gets past Camavinga in the box and sends an absolute curler into the far post. This is one of the other goals that I highly, highly, highly recommend you look up. Real Madrid had a few okay chances in the rest of the first half. And 10 minutes, not even coming out of halftime, Brahim Diaz, again, another underrated Real Madrid player who's really stepped up today, playing in that left wing. He dances like a ballerina, gets around one, gets by another, shoots past another, and glides it into the bottom right. Oh my lord, it was a fantastic shot. Each team from that point on exchanged decent chances, but again, that was another goal that I implore you to look up. Just truly fantastic. And Mbappe he could have put this tie away. I mean, he had the break, he had Vinicius, and it just looked like he sat on the ball too long. Didn't really know what to do, what the best move was, and Atletico were able to defend it away, which is surprising because Mbappe is a world-class player. Usually world-class players, you don't have to worry about those types of situations, but, he screwed it up. No big deal. Real Madrid 2, Atletico Madrid 1. It's gonna be an interesting tie going back into the Wanda Metropolitano. Wait, that might be their old stadium. No, that's their new stadium. Atletico Madrid are very capable of winning this tie in the return leg. And maybe it's a cliche, but I think the first goal in the return leg is really going to dictate the kind of like trajectory of this tie. If Real Madrid come out and put one in 25 minutes in with Mbappe just slots into the corner, it's over. Atletico aren't coming back. If Antoine Griezmann gets his head on a corner 30 minutes in, makes it 1-0 Atletico Madrid, the next tie, gets that stadium erupted, gets Simeone fired up, then we're going to have a ball game. So we'll see. I'm very, very excited for the return fixture. And then we'll move on to the Wednesday games. What do we have on Wednesday? We started off with Feyenoord hosting Inter Milan. Feyenoord really must love playing teams from Milan this year. They defeated AC Milan in the tie before, and they were rewarded with Inter Milan. Again, this is another one. It took the game a little bit to build up. First 30, 35 minutes, there were some shots here or there, but it was nothing. Both teams seemed, kind of cagey until it wasn't. Denzel Dumfries made a run. He got a good pass from Aslani, and then Marcus Thuram scored a wonderful goal off the cross in the 37th minute. A really just good 1-2-3 play. Inter Milan take a lead, 1-0. They kind of take it in halftime. Then they come out in the second half. The midfielder, Piotr Zielinski for Inter Milan, has his shot that he attempts, hits the Feyenoord goalkeeper, comes right back to his feet, but instead of shooting again, he finds the wonderful Lautaro Martinez right outside the 6-yard box, who is never not going to score when he gets a ball in that position. And Inter Milan is up 2-0 right after halftime. And from that point on, it just seemed like it was going to be a daunting task for Feyenoord. And yeah, I mean, they almost scored from a time or two, but they never really threatened too much. Mitchell for Feyenoord actually fouled Marcus Thuram in the box around the 60-minute mark. And in real time, I wasn't sure. And then you watch the replays and you thought, okay, it makes sense to be a penalty. Zielinski actually stepped up for the penalty attempt. I didn't realize he was Inter Milan's penalty guy, but it wasn't a bad penalty, but it was saved. So I guess any penalty that doesn't score isn't a good penalty. And yeah, Inter just kind of rode out the rest of the game, and they took the 2-0 lead. And they're going to take the 2-0 lead back to Milan, which should just about seal away this tie. And frankly, now I'm thinking about it, there's not a lot of can't say there's a lot of ties this week that I'm really looking forward to. I think Inter's over, Villa's over, Arsenal's over, one or two that we're going to talk about's over. But yeah, I guess Dortmund, Lille, Real Madrid, Atletico, and one of the games we're going to talk about is still on. But we're going to get into one tie that is over. Bayern Munich versus Bayer Leverkusen. I mean, off the bat, I was kind of surprised to find Patrick Schick starting on the bench for Bayer Leverkusen. He's been fantastic this season. And yeah, maybe it was the wrong decision because, I mean, I know he's not a defender, but 9 minutes into the game, Premier League connection, Michael Elise sends a cross in, finds Harry Kane, who's open on a cross. Harry Kane, who's absolutely going to score that every time. He's one of the best headers of the ball in the world. He's one of the best strikers in the world. And Bayern are up early just like that. And then actually, Upamecano actually almost gave up a goal right away after that to Bayer Leverkusen. But Neuer, he's not the same Neuer he used to be. He saved the day. And actually, Manuel Neuer had to come off for injury in the 58th minute. I actually haven't looked into what's he doing, but I guess we'll see whether or not he pops up on the team sheet going into the second leg of this matchup. But then, get back into the first half. Musiala almost scored. There were like 3 other solid chances for Bayern Munich in the first couple minutes. They completely dominated the flow of the game, which they had a recent match with Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga, and this was the complete opposite of it. And that was the first half. Bayern Munich were up 1-0. Again, controlled virtually everything. And then not too far out into the first half, 54th minute, Joshua Kimmich cross is completely mishandled by the Bayer Leverkusen goalkeeper, Mate and then Jamal Musiala right there. Mate Kuvash. It shouldn't have been a goal whatsoever. I mean, there was really no chance. And then the misery piles on for Leverkusen as Musiala sends his studs into the back of a Bayern Munich player, which was just an absolute stupid tackle. He earns his second yellow card. Now they're down a man. I mean, I can't stress this enough. How just dumb of a tackle it really was. Corner kick, not too long after, Harry Kane essentially gets tackled. I guess overcompensating for the lack of coverage on the cross before. And yeah, he gets a pen to make it 3-0 because he's Harry Kane and he doesn't miss those. And then there were two almost amazing plays. Because at that point, Bayern Munich had the game. They were home. It was in their hands. It was over. Leroy Sané dribbled through like 4 Leverkusen players. Couldn't put it on goal. Would have been amazing. And then Paulinho really let down his opponent because Jamal Musiala hit one of the best assists I would have ever seen. This is another one I'm telling you to look up. He flicks the ball to himself in the box. Think like Dennis Bergkamp for Arsenal against Newcastle. And the famous goal, one considered one of the best goals in Premier League history. Flicks it to himself, gets past Bayer Leverkusen player, sets it up for Paulinho. Paulinho misses. Should have been a goal. Should have been 4-0. This was a complete domination. Bayern dominated every aspect. The Leverkusen only had one shot on goal, and it was early on. They didn't have one the rest of the game. It's supposed to be a great team. They look like amateurs. I mean, just completely one-sided. They were fantastic. Bayern looked better than they have all season, and I've been kind of hard on Bayern because Vincent Kompany's been their manager. I don't think they've been set up for success. I think they've lacked that bite most of the year, and they were kind of coasting by in the Bundesliga once they realized like Bayer Leverkusen is not going to push them. But this was a game that Bayern Munich looked as Bayern Munich should look, and now I'm like, okay, Bayern Munich are a legitimate threat to win the Champions League this year, which, while it sounds like a pretty obvious statement, again, I wasn't impressed with their early season results. So this was a pleasant surprise if you're a fan of Bayern Munich. Now, I'm not personally. I am neutral. This is a neutral podcast. I say things neutrally. And I can tell you the neutral opinion is Bayern Munich look good as shit. And any team that's going to come up to them in the Champions League, whether it be Barcelona, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Arsenal, Inter Milan, Bayern Munich have a shot at winning this. But then we're going to talk about one of those potential teams. Barcelona went to Benfica. And they actually recently played in the league phase of the Champions League before this. And the game finished 5-4. Barcelona, I believe. It was like 9 goals. Well, there weren't 9 goals today. Thought for a second there may be. Because Benfica almost scored 20 seconds in. Then they had another chance. Then Dani Olmo had a good shot. And all this was in the first 2 minutes. And then Lewandowski had a really good chance to score in 12th minute. Benfica goalkeeper made a damn triple save. And then I thought maybe the scoring would really open up because Barcelona received a red card 20 minutes in. Kerbasi stopped a Pavlidis potential one-on-one, and I don't think it was the right play by Kerbasi. I mean, he's a young kid. And I think, but I'm Barcelona. I'm a Barcelona manager. I'm a Barcelona player. And you're 22 minutes into the first leg of a Champions League tie. Would you rather be down a goal or down a man? I think you'd rather be down a goal. And ultimately, it proved to be wrong. But conventionally speaking, going forward, I think I'd rather be down a goal. I mean, Szczesny made some wonderful saves once they did go down. I mean, he was man of the match for Barcelona. Or should have been at least. And Barcelona really did play well with 10 men. It felt like it was an even match. I mean, you really can't tell. I mean, 99% of every game ever, where there's a man down, you can tell which team has the man down and which team doesn't. But in this game, it felt even. And Benfica's Pavlidis probably should have put a cross away after halftime that found him right outside the 6-yard box, but he couldn't put it away. I mean, there were more chances for Benfica out of the start of the second half. And it looked like maybe they would eventually break through that Barcelona goal. But then a poor giveaway. It wasn't terrible, but it was Rafinha just jumped right over it, right on it off that pass. He gets a wonderful shot from outside the box. All the momentum, left corner, man down. Barcelona was given a 1-0 lead. It looked like Benfica was going to get their chance when Andrea Bellotti thought he earned a penalty for Benfica, but he was offsides in the build-up, so they brought it back. Renato Sanchez also had a decent chance, but Szczesny really was the player of the game. He made plenty of great saves to keep Barcelona in this game. I mean, Benfica had 8 shots on target, 26 shots overall, 13 corner kicks, and Szczesny just really stood his ground. And Yeah, I mean, Benfica dominated those aspects, but I wouldn't say they dominated the game. Barcelona looked mighty capable of handling them with 10 men. And unfortunately, I do think going into this second leg, it should be over. I really can't see Benfica turning this tie around. I mean, for the sake of entertainment, I love it if it was a good second leg. But yeah, this should be all Barcelona. All Barcelona. And then we're going to get to the final tie of the Champions League. Liverpool versus PSG. The top team from France versus the top team from England. And I'm going to do this game recap a little different. We're just going to talk about all PSG's really good chances. First, João Neves, 16 minutes in, had a ball that was crossed into the penalty marker where he was standing. He sends it over the net. Second, Kvaratskhelia Kvaratskhelia. He scores, but he's offside by a matter of inches after a corner clearance. Would have been a fantastic finish. 29 minutes in, chance number 3. Kvaratskhelia has a decent shot outside the box. It's saved by Alisson. Number 4, Bradley Barcola sets up Dembele for a one-on-one. A minute later, can't put it away, saved by Alisson. Immediately after, on the rebound, Barcola had a good chance to score himself, sends it over. 6, Kvaratskhelia gets past 2 Liverpool defenders. Alisson makes a one-hand save. This was in the 37th minute. Chance number 7, Kvaratskhelia has a good free kick. Sends it to the far post, saved by Alisson. And then 8th, Doué puts it on his right foot and has a shot outside the box, saved by Alisson in the 80th minute. Now, I just want to make it clear to you. These weren't just PSG shots. They had 27 of them in total. These were actually legitimate good chances. Chances where the odds of them not scoring one of them are incredibly low. If it weren't for the absolute heroics of Alisson Becker, the Brazilian goalkeeper, who played one of the best goalkeeping Premier League games that Champions League games that I've ever seen. So we talked about all those fantastic PSG chances, and after that 8th one, the shot by Doué that I mentioned, Liverpool hadn't had a shot on target. And then Mo Salah, the best player in the world right now, gets subbed out for Harvey Elliott, who's not the best player in the world right now. Alisson sends a long ball, I believe it's about the 86th, 87th minute. He sends a long ball to Darwin Núñez, who boxes out Marquinhos and wins the header. Ball lands to himself. Harvey Elliott with a late run, kind of wide open. Darwin Núñez finds him. And then somehow, against everything, against a completely one-sided game against a team that had been considered the best team in Europe this year, Liverpool score. PSG absolutely dominated this game, and Liverpool score. I think it should have been saved by Donnarumma. I really do. And there was kind of like a narrative on Twitter that Gianluigi Donnarumma actually can't make the important save when he's supposed to, and it was like a compilation of saves he missed out on. But this was crazy, and Liverpool are a great team, and I hate using the word luck. I hate it. I hate it. But goddamn, I can't help but feel that Liverpool has just gotten a little lucky this year. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, yeah, okay, you could say Alisson had a great game, because that's the only reason it was close. I mean, this was crazy. This was shocking. I couldn't believe it. What a game. I'm very excited in Anfield, because even though Liverpool are up a game, I don't think PSG's just going to let them have it. I think it's going to be a very, very, very interesting tie. Probably be on a couple hours from when you listen to it. So yeah, there was the 8 Champions League games. Exciting. I mean, as knockout football is, it's cagey. It's rare that these games are the best game you've ever seen, and it's a pleasant surprise when they are. So now we're briefly gonna get into some of the Europa League. We're gonna run over these really quick. First up, AZ Alkmaar, Dutch side. Been a good year to be a Dutch team. They upset Tottenham 1-0. Own goal. Survive the rest of the game. Tottenham now have to come back to London, needing to overcome a 1-goal deficit. Should be interesting. Lyon, the French team, goes to Steaua Bucharest, defeats them 3-1. Should be pretty comfortable heading back to France with a 2-goal lead. And Rangers, Scottish side, straight out of Glasgow. They go to Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce and pick up a 3-1 victory. Again, should be incredibly comfortable for them heading back to the Ibrox. Manchester United draw Real Sociedad in Spain in a kind of a cagey 1-1 matchup. I think Manchester United should feel pretty confident going into the second leg, but it's a good Sociedad team, so I'm very excited for the match on Thursday. Ajax of Amsterdam hosted Eintracht Frankfurt of Germany.
They were ultimately defeated 2-1. Frankfurt should feel pretty good about themselves. Recent champions, I think they've won it the last 5 years, as they go back to Germany with a 1-goal lead. AS Roma got a late goal against Bilbao. Should make for an exciting tie as they go back to Spain with a 1-goal lead. And then Bodo Glimt out of Norway defeated last year's Conference League champions Olympiacos out of Greece 3-0 with a pretty resounding victory, especially considering the Norwegian teams are currently on a break. So the only matches that Bodo Glimt are playing right now are their current European matches. The playoff round from a couple weeks prior and this match against Olympiacos. And then Lazio went to Victoria Pilsen over in the Czech Republic and picked up a 2-1 lead. They're going to take the game to the Stadio Olimpico with a 1-0 victory. I think it's going to be really exciting Europa League matches. And then we're going to get to the Conference League, the third tier. And I'm going to butcher some names because I don't know who I'm talking about. And I know about a lot of teams. Humble brag. Chelsea went to Copenhagen to play FC Copenhagen. I do know that team. They were in the Champions League knockouts last year. Chelsea won 2-1. Molde, another Norwegian side, defeated Legia Warsaw out of Poland 3-2. The Greek Panathinaikos defeated Fiorentina 3-2. Real Betis at home drew Vitória Guimarães out of Portugal. Kind of a disappointing result, 2-2. Borac Banja Luka out of Bosnia and Herzegovina tied Rapid Vienna, which I think is a pretty impressive result for them. Jagiellonia Białystok out of Poland had a resounding 3-0 victory over Cercle Bruges out of Belgium. NK Celje out of Slovenia defeated FC Lugano out of Switzerland 1-0. And then Paphos out of Cyprus defeated Djurgården out of Sweden, I believe. Whatever. This is Chelsea's competition to lose. I mean, the only teams I was giving them credible threat of beating them were Fiorentina and Real Betis. Betis couldn't beat a mid-table Portuguese side at home. And Fiorentina, I know going to a Greek team is always a hard time, so I think Fiorentina will do good in the second leg. But yeah, that's where it all is. So it's going to be a very exciting couple of days. You got Champions League Tuesday, you got Champions League Wednesday, and then Europa League and the Conference League on Thursday. All that will be recapped on the Tuesday, March 19th episode, which I will have to you promptly. Again, I do apologize for the couple episodes I missed. Just a very busy time. No excuses. We're going to be better. We got this. And then we're going to transition to a new segment.
All right. So this is a new segment I want to start off. We'll call it Podium News. We'll get the three big news topics in the world of soccer. I know I don't want everything just to be what were the games this week. Like what happened? What are the news? What are the things outside? And we're going to rank them 3, 2, 1, in my opinion, of how important they are. And we'll go to the first one. Well, I guess this would be number 3. The NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, is to get rid of their collegiate draft. So from this point on, if someone in college finishes their career, they're free to sign with any NWSL team as they please. They don't have to go through a draft. They're just essentially a free agent. It's the first North American sports league to get rid of their draft system, and I find it very interesting. I don't think it'll have an impact on the basketball, football, hockeys of the world, but going into the MLS, where the MLS draft has been decreased in its significance and value as kind of college soccer is not the only route for Americans. Some go overseas, some stay within teams' academies. It'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years if the MLS follows the same suit, if they find the draft really having a point. And I know they use draft picks sometimes as like trade value and whatnot, but it's just a really interesting move from the NWSL, and I wonder how it's going to shake out for their league going forward. Second biggest news story is the 2026 World Cup. FIFA said they may be considering a halftime show during the final in New York. No solid plan yet, but just an idea that was thrown out there by FIFA. And you know what? I'll say it. I think the 2026 World Cup final having a halftime show is not the worst idea in the world. It's an American tournament. It's our World Cup. I know Mexico and Canada are involved as well, but majority of the games are going to be in the United States. An overwhelming majority of the games are going to be in the United States. The final's going to be in New York, and a staple of American culture is the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is known for the production of its halftime show, and I think that's a really good American spin on a World Cup final. I mean, as long as they don't blow it out of proportion, like it shouldn't be 30 minutes, shouldn't be 20 minutes, 10, 15, just like the NFL, at best, at the most. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. I know FIFA's always going to look like these money-hungry, just always a bad idea. It's all about profits. But I actually am supportive of a halftime show in the 2026 World Cup. It's an American tournament. Give it an American twist. And the top news story, in my opinion, of the last week is the 2030 World Cup, which is going to be hosted by Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, as well as some honorary games in Uruguay, Argentina, and I think just Argentina, maybe Paraguay, in honor of the first World Cup ever in 1930, which why it's just not in Uruguay again, I don't know. But again, it's FIFA, but I'm getting besides the point. It was announced that not announced. Let me rephrase this. FIFA said they were considering expanding the 2030 World Cup to 64 teams. And I hate that idea. I think that's a stupid idea. I think 48 teams in the 2026 World Cup is pushing it. It's not the worst idea in the world. 48's not terrible because in recent years, there's been good teams who've been left out of World Cups. Teams like Chile, teams like the United States, Italy, the Netherlands, Jordan. There are room for other countries to play in the World Cup who will compete at 48. At 64, you're just diluting the talent, and it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, you double the amount of teams that make it, you're going to see teams that just don't deserve to be there. I mean, how well do you think Oman's going to do against France? Yeah, Honduras is really going to put up a fight against Argentina. And you got to bring in player safety to this too. You know, it feels like more than ever players are dropping like flies. Florian Wirtz is hurt. Kai Havertz, Bukayo Saka, Rodri. It feels like players left and right are getting these hamstring and ACLs, which is usually a sign of wear and tear. I'm not supportive of it. I hope FIFA doesn't go through with it. Endgame, eventually, the World Cup will be 64 teams. That is just the hellscape that we are inevitably crawling towards. But hopefully they can push it back as far as possible. I mean, yeah, more and more places are playing the game of soccer than ever before. I will admit that. But it doesn't make this 64-team World Cup a good idea. I'm not in favor of it. Because Ecuador versus the Solomon Islands is going to be the game everyone wants to watch. It's a stupid idea. So yeah, that's the new segment. You know, I think it's just 3 news stories to end every episode will be pretty good going forward. Again, just to split it up. You know, it doesn't always have to be results. You know, there's more things going on in the world of soccer, and I really want to cover them. So yeah, no, I think this is the first hour-long episode. I've been editing this as I'm going along, and right now I think we're sitting at the 1 hour, 16-minute mark. 76 minutes. I haven't made it this long. And what's crazy is I'm thinking ahead, and I think next week's episode is going to be even longer. That one may even push the hour-and-a-half mark. So again, if you're here, thank you for being here. I'm going to do my social media shout-out. I'm not the most active on Twitter, and that's only because I can't compete with the Twitter trolling. I mean, it's hard debating people and have an opinion about soccer on Twitter. You will get eaten alive. You will get eaten alive. But it's at Talk Soccer to Me podcast on Instagram, at Talk Soccer to Me on TikTok. We got the YouTube up and running. We post every podcast on the YouTube as well as shorts, reels, TikToks, just little clips of the show. Amazon podcast, Spotify podcast, Apple podcast. It's on a couple other different podcast services. If you made it this far, you are a great listener, and I love you from the bottom of my heart. If you didn't make it this far, I hate you. But thanks for listening. Comment, like, subscribe, everything going forward. I appreciate you. I'm Jack Alt. This is Talk Soccer to Me. Have a great rest of your week. Go watch some Champions League. Go play some pickup. Go have some fun.